What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another Bring the Juice Colts podcast live stream. Guys, we're here talking some more Colts football because there's a lot more to keep talking about. I have my good friend Lawrence Owen, aka Colts Law, with me today. How are you today, my friend?
Doing well, a little busy. As you know, tons of content out there. Gotta keep people happy, but a lot of news rushing around the NFL and the Indianapolis Colts, and we got to keep up with it.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, there's so much going on right now, Lawrence, in the span of the last few days. It just feels like it's impossible to really wrap your head around everything that's going on. I first want to get your thoughts on what was your reaction when you found out on Monday that Frank Reich was no longer going to be the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts? Give me your initial thoughts on that.
After the game that I'd watched Sunday, it didn't surprise me. Right, that was a situation. You look at that and you go, man, this offense did not have a single third down conversion. They gave up 9 sacks, a ton of hits, couldn't run the football. They had, you know, 100 and some offensive yards total. I think they were in the negatives in the first half until that last drive. It was awful. The situations after the firing of Marcus Brady, you knew that if the offense didn't even look as good as it was prior to Marcus Brady's fire, that it was going to go even more so on Frank Reich. So after the game against the New England Patriots, you just kind of expected it. You really did.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we're kind of in the moment of, talking more along the lines of how the Colts did it. And we're hearing new information apparently every day now from Zach Kiefer. He's keep bringing out this new information every day about how this whole situation was handled. I agree with you. After that game Sunday, I mean, you said it, they fired the OC. It's like, all right, Frank, this is you now. This is it. You have nobody else to blame here. And then you have the worst, probably the most collectively worst day offensively that this franchise may have ever seen. So it was really, really bad. And, I think that, Irsay just said, enough is enough. I'm tired of this. I said that Frank was okay, but I don't want to continue to see, guys do this every single week. We are still trying to win here, and it's not making it any easier for you. At the end of the day, I get it. I think almost everyone can accept the fact that, even though Frank Reich never really had a great stick in a lot of things when it came to the quarterback and how the offensive line is going now, but at the end of the day, he did stick his neck out for Carson Wentz. That was a very failed experiment, right? And when you talk about how the team always starts the years like this, not quite like this, but record-wise, this team never starts out hot, right? He doesn't have a whole lot of success to show over the span of 5 years, even with all this quarterback nonsense that's been going on. I think what everyone was wondering, and we covered the presser on this channel on Monday, and everyone was freaking out because we were like, what's going to happen here with everything that's, they keep pushing the time back. They hired Jeff Saturday. Before we get into that one, what was your thoughts on Jeff Saturday a few hours after the announcement? And we're talking about these interim head coaches maybe within the building. Then you hear Jeff Saturday. What was your initial reaction to that?
Like everybody else. What? What? A little bit of shock. That was a much bigger shock than Frank Reich being fired. Obviously, I kind of looked at it and I was like, okay, this is out of the left field. And this is football, not baseball. But that was my initial reaction. And then I sat down and I thought about it a little bit, right? And I started to realize why this decision came to be, and why Jeff Saturday was grabbed. And After a little bit of time, and the more time that I sit and think about it, and the more time that I, talk to players and other coaches and stuff like that over the last 24 hours, it's not as bad as people seem to think it is. At least I not from what, there's optimism right now in the
Mhm.
building with this. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that. I mean, I know you talk with Rodney McLeod and everything else, and you might have had a tiny little tidbit into what's going on inside the locker room. I know some people who have said that not only coaches around the league don't like what this symbolizes. We've even heard reports of like coaches and players in the Colts locker room are not liking this move and the fact that this was completely out of the blue, as you said. Um, have you heard anything like, as in like the locker room is not liking this, or is it just, or do you think that everyone is embracing Saturday because of the person that the Indianapolis Colts know him to be?
Okay, well, first off, when the news dropped yesterday in the building, or not yesterday, but on Monday in the building when Frank Reich was fired, it was complete shock throughout the locker room. Everybody was just like, "Oh my goodness!" All right, that's the information I'm grabbing from players, Rodney McLeod and a few other guys. That it was to them, it was left field, just him being fired. Right, they didn't expect that because they felt like it was more of an organizational. A lot of the players put it on themselves, not just on Frank Reich or the other coaches or something of that nature. It felt like the team let down, not just a single person. But they understand that this is a business, and you have to kind of roll with the punches when things like that happen. The Jeff Saturday hiring was also a bit of a shocking news. Most of the guys weren't in the building when it was announced, and they weren't there when Jeff Saturday showed up on Monday, right? For the presser, because he showed up late, and all the majority of the players were outside the building at that time. So they found out pretty much just the way everybody else did on social media, unless they had like a specific coach or something like that, text them or something. So this was something that was kind of out of left field for them as well. And when they got into the locker room, there was more support than what is being said out there in national media, local media. There's a lot of support right here for Jeff Saturday. You got to remember, there's a lot of guys here that played with Saturday, on this coaching squad. You got Cato June and Reggie Wayne, guys who are going to support him 100%. And also, Strausser and Kevin Mawai have been, working with Saturday off and on, texting and talking and stuff like that, because Jeff Saturday's been a consultant over the past year with them. So, they got that support as well. And then when you look at the fact that, he's got the history here with the Indianapolis Colts back during the Pride heydays and stuff like that, a lot of people look at him and respect him. And after the walkthrough and the talks today with the player, with the meetings that they had, he really brought this organization together during those meetings and during the walkthroughs. He made it very clear what his job and responsibility and what he plans to do he himself, and what he expects from the coaches and the players as well. So this is something that I believe that, as a locker room, as a team, I think that this team as a whole is backing him and supporting him 100%.
Yeah, I think that there's just the side of the fans that you talk to that, think that there's a lot more to this than there really is. And then there's what's actually going on, and that it's really not that much of a divide. I think it's just more outside noise than anything. Jeff Saturday, I mean, say what you want about his lack of a coaching history. I mean, we all kind of understand why Saturday got it. They even said it in the presser on Monday. They've been trying to get him in the building for like 10 years. They've been trying to get him in here for a long time. It's just never really worked out until now. and everything else that's going on. Before we get into the presser, though, I did want to mention this to you because I want to get your perspective on it because we keep getting new information. Shout out to Zach Kiefer, who's been kind of on this for a while now over the last like 3 days. And he's been getting more info even after the presser. And they've been saying that Jim Irsay apparently like, I'm trying to make sure I phrase this properly. It comes out to the fact that he called Saturday. The first tweet that came out was that he called Saturday during the game Sunday. And everyone heard that and was like, oh my God, he was calling Saturday to replace Frank Reich in the middle of the game. Well, no, that's not apparently what was said. He was talking about like, can you explain to me what's going on here? What's going on? And then later that night, Jim Irsay came to the conclusion that after the game was over, that he wanted Saturday in the building. And, you know, Saturday even said like, you know, I didn't get like, there wasn't a lot of advance notice. I literally got a call that night. Hey, you want the job? This is it. We're into it. Right. And then on top of it, from what we're hearing is Irsay did not actually meet with Frank Reich face-to-face to announce to him that he's being fired. He literally did it over a phone call. You know, Lawrence, like, I do want to get your opinion on this. Me personally, I feel that's a really, really bad message from Irsay because Irsay's been a very classy guy. He has been a guy that has preached accountability and everything else going forward. And even if you were insanely upset with how Frank Reich has handled the last 10 months inside your building, I feel like that was a very disrespectful thing to do to him with the fact that you couldn't, as a man, get out of your emotions for 5 seconds, bring the guy into the building and say, hey, man, I'll let you go. You know, well, that's how I would want to do it. That's how I would do it. Like, what is your thoughts on, you know, Irsay kind of doing all of this, but kind of doing it from like the back of the room, so to speak?
Well, you kind of hit a little bit on the head there. We all know Jim Irsay is a very emotional person. He has a lot invested in this team, you know, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, he's been everything from the ball boy to the GM to the owner, you know, and he loves this team. And when something like what's happened over the last few weeks, it's got to be difficult on him. And I understand that he has a lot of respect for Frank Reich, and he still respects him. He still thinks he's a good coach. He thinks he'll be he thinks he'll get another head coaching job in the NFL. But you're right. He needed, even if he was being emotional at that time, he still needed to find a way of getting him face to face, you know, and talk to him about the situation. Maybe he was afraid that Frank would talk him out of it. That could be a situation, you know.
Ironically enough, Tony Dungy said that he would have talked Jim Irsay out of the decision if he would have called, right? So everyone is saying like Jim Irsay would have done this, but he was like, you're right. Like the emotional part of it made him get out of character for what he said he was going to do. And on one hand, I get it. You know, like that's part of being human. We have those situations where we become vulnerable due to our emotions. But when you know, you can't say things in the media and then a week later, you know, go back on them. And, you know, he even said that in the presser about Ballard, which we're going to get into here shortly. But it just feels like all of this was just mishandled in a way.
Yeah, but there was a lot of moving parts as well, right? I mean, there was a lot of moving parts. Jim was probably tired as hell because he talked about how him and Ballard and were up all night, you know, all day, all night talking about the situation. And then, of course, the calls back and forth with Jeff Saturday throughout the day and night. You know, he just got done. What Jeff said that he didn't even get to look at the game until 7:00 Sunday night, you know, and that was the reason why Jim had called him in the middle of the game, was to get his opinions on things, but he was preparing to go to work and he hadn't even watching the game yet. So, you know, there was a lot of moving parts going on at that time. He was emotional. I'm not trying to bring up excuses for him, but there was a lot of stuff going on. He still, however, like you said, he still should have done that. And he still should have brought him into the office, even if he was afraid. He could have had Ballard there beside him to help him and make sure that they were, because I got a feeling that Ballard, even though he can get emotional as well, he is a very steadfast person and doesn't let his emotions affect, his decision making, because my goodness, if that's the case, then we would have had a lot of different moves over the last, few years that did not happen. Right.
That is very true. Yes.
So. I think maybe Irsay should have probably brought Ballard in to his office with him to have that meeting, just to have that steady rock beside him while he had that conversation with Frank.
Yeah. And then, you bring Ballard into the equation, and that's something that we've been saying on this channel for the last 3 weeks, when this team was really struggling. And, you saw the issues with the offensive line and talking about everything that's going on inside the locker room. And then you had Frank Reich getting all of the blame thrown at him, right? And we never heard from Ballard or Irsay about the status of this team, and to have some kind of backing on this, saying, yeah, it's also our fault. We're trying our best to try to figure this out. But no, they let Frank every week go out there and get all of these questions and all these accusations thrown at him, and just to take all the beating, while they kind of stayed behind and didn't do anything until after they got rid of Frank Reich. And then when you go to the presser, I mean, I don't know how you felt about it, Lawrence. There's a lot to unpack from that, but it felt like Ballard really did not want to be there. It looked like he was very upset with having to be there, sitting in front of everyone, and to hear all this, even though he got the fewest questions of everyone in the presser.
I 100% agree. To your first point about Frank Reich taking the heat, I think that was on purpose. I don't think that they were trying to hide. I think they were trying to figure out, okay, two things. One, let's see how Frank handles this under fire, right? Let's see how this situation unfolds. And at the same time, in the back of their head, they're planning, well, depending upon how this unfolds, is how we're going to do, go about things, right? Are we going to end up having to fire him after the Patriots game? Is he going to step up and maybe fix a few things? How's he going to handle the blame and the situation and stuff like that? I believe that was calculated by Irsay and Ballard in that situation, to not get out there and talk much. However, and is that unfair to Frank? Maybe, but in a business, your bosses do stuff like that. You know, that it is how it is. You got to evaluate everybody all the time. And that is one way of evaluating someone that is in charge. When it comes to the presser and Ballard and sitting there, and I'm all honesty here, I'm looking at this and I'm like, dude, Ballard keeps looking at Irsay every time Irsay was talking. He's like, what the hell are you saying? You can see it in his eyes.
That was
right?
What everyone was saying that night, dude. Like, it was so weird because, it was a presser that was supposed to introduce Jeff Saturday, right? Like, this is supposed to be all about Jeff Saturday. But really, 70% of it, or 75% of the conference, was Irsay. It felt like was Irsay and Ballard trying to cover their ass and to defend themselves with what was going on and what they were doing, right? Like, they felt like they weren't doing it right, but so they had to exaggerate with as many different metaphors as they could on why this was a good decision and why they're doing it right. Like, it's one of those situations, Lawrence, and you probably heard this a few times, you don't have to justify doing the right thing by saying it many, many times. If you know it's the right thing, you say it once and you're done. But the fact that they reiterated it, Irsay reiterated it probably 7 or 8 times, that with 9 or 10 different metaphors, that, this was the right decision. I don't know how to make sausage. I don't know what goes into sausage. Like what was that? What was that from Irsay, dude?
Yeah, I'm not an astronaut. I'm not a rocket scientist. I don't know how to take care of that kind of stuff. But
I just know how to make a winning football team.
yeah, well, you know what? I'll tell you exactly what happened in this situation. And I think a lot of you Colts fans out there, you're smart. You know this too. All right, Jim Irsay made this decision. It got announced. They started a presser. They said it for 6 o'clock, and then social media blew up. And then you started getting responses left and right. And Irsay, Irsay is all on social media, right? He is very in tune to how media and fans talk and react. Okay. And the way all the conversations and blames and questions and stuff like that the social media was throwing out there was putting his back to a wall. And he felt like, you know what? I'm walking into this presser having to defend myself, the organization, and my decision right off the bat. And now, did that have anything to do with why it kept getting moved back, or the fact that Jeff Saturday showed up late in the evening and they had to push stuff? Probably a lot of that had to do with it, but without any question, Irsay, Ballard, they knew what social media was like after the decision was made and it was announced. And seeing all these comments about the Rooney Rule and Jeff Saturday has no experience and everything else that was going on, they were in a defensive position and they had to come out swinging and talking to defend themselves immediately, because if they had not, then most of the questions and the allegations would come throughout the entire presser. So I think that they felt like they would get that out of the way and let Jeff Saturday handle any direct questions to himself the best way he can, so he wouldn't have to defend himself in with a lot of those things. Because Ballard and Irsay, they've dealt with those kind of things before. It's unfair to not prep yourself and direct all that stuff to you when you just hire a new guy right off the street, basically, for this position. And then some of that, if you don't direct it to yourself, is going to end up going to him,
Yeah, I get it. You're trying to ease the load off of Saturday, who's just there to fill the role that he was given, right? Like, I mean, that's just his job. And for all intents and purposes, I think that presser on Monday, I thought Jeff Saturday actually did a really fantastic job of handling the few times he was able to speak. I felt like he answered everything calmly and correctly, and he didn't sound like the moment was too big for him. I felt like he's handled everything the way that you should in this profession. And I mean, what was your thoughts on how Saturday handled that presser on Monday?
Oh, I think he handled it great, but at the same time, I would have been disappointed if he couldn't. This is a guy who was part of a team, a leader of men, a leader of very good men on the football field, all pro, knew how to talk to reporters back in those days. Then he became an analyst and, a TV reporter, and he's talking to people on the fly, to millions of people, all at once on TV or whatnot. And, he's had those years to be able to talk to people. But, at the same time, he's always been able to do that and yet stay true to himself, right? Be that guy and be that leader and yet still be true to yourself. So, the fact that he handled himself well, not only on Mondays, but today's presser was expected. And I was actually pleasantly surprised on how well he did, even more so with a lot of the accusations that were being flung around.
True. I did want to see this. So did you see Jeff's press conference? I know you did. Do you want to, I didn't get to see it, but you told me a little bit of what was going on. Do you want to enlighten Tom on that?
Yeah, Tom, I watched it right before we went live. I was busy doing my film room on my channel and got that posted out. And then I was looking at the time going, oh crap, man, I got to get ready to get on BTJ with Derek. So, I spent that time to watch the presser, and wow. First off, look, I don't know about you, Derek, and how you feel about Greg Doyle. But he is, there are words I can't say here to express how I feel about Greg Doyle. Okay. There's been many a times in the past where he has just been a four-letter word in press conferences and asking questions and stuff. And in this case, he was so as well, and not just to the guys that he's asking questions, but the fellow reporters as well, right beside him. It was terrible. He basically told all the other reporters to shut up and let him go through two questions and don't interrupt him. That was completely and utterly disrespectful to everybody. And then he asked the question to Jeff Saturday, and Jeff Saturday just shut him down immediately. He's like, no. He basically asked him, I find it incredibly difficult to believe that you didn't know anything about being hired more than 12 hours prior to, the announcement. And Jeff said, look at me. I didn't. All right. I didn't, and straight up. And then there was questions going on through the rest of the presser. The rest of the questions were actually pretty respectful. Yeah, he did congratulate media about being, he said that, they had talked in the walkthroughs and the meetings today about Parks Frazier. And then 10 minutes after that decision was made, it was leaked to the press. He said, good job on that, guys. You do a good job on getting leaked information, because he was supposed to announce that today, but didn't get a chance to do that himself because the media already knew it.
Right.
So that, to me, that sounds like something that he's going to try to put a lid on later on as well. Try to figure out what's going on there. He did say that he during his meeting that Reggie Wayne was very fired up with his speeches about everybody being accountable for their jobs, no matter whether you're a water boy or the head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. He was excited about Gus Bradley and Bubba Ventrone. Said that he's very happy that they're there, that they're going to make him look a lot better, and is excited because he said that both those guys and their units have played so phenomenal all year, that it's going to help him do his part. He also said that, right now, when it comes to the offensive line, that he's not going to directly put his hand in it because he still has a lot that he has to get into because he's never been a coach before, right? Mm-hmm. So he's got to figure things out. Like I said, he's only had a single walkthrough, not even an actual practice yet.
Right.
But he has had talks with Kevin Mawai and with Chris Strasser, and they're going to have more talks about that. He says, that is a position that he absolutely loves, something that he has a lot of accountability about, and will definitely have a direct hand in that as the season progresses. He also talked about when it comes, he hasn't even talked to the two analytics guys yet, right? Hasn't even talked to those guys yet. Hasn't even met them, and said that, he's an offensive lineman and he knows how important points are and how hard they are to get. And then if it's in a situation to whether you go for it or take the points, he says, I'm taking the points.
Mm-hmm.
So, he lets a lot of information out that a lot of other coaches don't, but he's not doing it in a way that is going to hurt the team in the long run. And I respect that a ton.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in regards to Doyle and everything else, I mean, I think Zach Hicks named it pretty well. Doyle is built for for a season like this, where there's a lot of drama that goes around, and Doyle, amongst, I think of all the local media people, he is the king of all of them at exploiting that drama and being able to make it as clickbaity as possible. He's very good at that. Yeah, I mean, we even, 2-3 weeks ago when Ellinger was named the starter, and he came out and said he felt that the coaches probably didn't, it feels like the coaches don't know what they're doing, because 1 week Ellinger's not good enough to be your backup, and then the next week he's automatically your starter, right? Like, that was a direct shot at Reich and everyone else that in the building, that it doesn't seem like you guys know what you're doing here. And then this week, obviously trying to trap Jeff Saturday in this mentality that he doesn't deserve the spot that he's been given, things of that nature. Look, I'm not here to I would never discredit Saturday for taking a position that he was offered. And if any other person was offered a position that they felt they may not be qualified for, or what everyone else in the world thought you weren't qualified enough to do, 95% of you are still taking that damn job. So, like, the fact that anyone would give it would actually make Jeff Saturday feel like he doesn't deserve it and he should ethically and morally go against that decision is stupid. But going back to the presser, and we're talking about the media sort of thing, right? Ballard and Irsay both had their fair share of comments towards some people. We had Irsay make a little tiny rant about analytics and things of that nature. And people were saying, oh, he's taking a shot at Frank Reich because he kept talking about how analytics is just, it's too much of the analytics, this and this and this and this. And then Ballard, the big comment, right? The big comment of the whole thing was, Ballard, I think it was Stephen Holder that asked the question, was saying, like, what's going on with this offensive line? Because, you brought in all these guys, right? You helped assembled it. Like, why is it doing this? It's like, yeah, it's like you guys have been shitting on me for years of not getting a wide receiver. And now all of a sudden I look up and we're underperforming on the O-line. Like, I felt like that was very out of character for Chris Ballard, because like I felt like he was very defensive on that comment, because for all these years, right, he has said build in the trenches, win in the trenches. It's all about the trenches. And the one time in his tenure that this offensive line is not doing its job, and it's not only not doing its job, but it's literally one of the worst offensive lines we've ever seen. And these were all Ballard's guys mainly that were brought in and he paid, right? And now it's like, oh man, I gotta respond to this. Well, I'm gonna respond by telling you guys, like, I told you so, right? It was kind of felt like that to me. What did you take away from that comment that Ballard made about the media begging for this and begging for that sort of thing?
Well, let me go back to the original analytics thing that you were talking about earlier with Jim Irsay and that. And that's a situation where, I don't think it was a direct shot at just Frank Reich. It was a direct shot at all the analytics guys in the NFL. I think that he feels that you need to go with more of your gut than analytics, and if we notice, Frank didn't start off analytical. He came in, was more of a gut guy, and then became more and more and more analytical and became reliant on the analytics rather than using your gut as a football guy that's been around the game for a long time. And he even talked about, Jeff doesn't have that fear in him, of using analytics rather than using your gut. And, he said he will have after a few games, but right now you got a fresh set of eyes and a fresh person, and we'll see how that rolls with that. When it comes to Chris Ballard, I've seen him be very defensive over a lot of things, especially when it comes to quarterbacks and wide receivers and things. He's talked about in the past in the draft. He says, "Do you want me to go out and get a quarterback or a wide receiver? But if I go grab one and they end up being trash, who's going to get all the blame? Me, right?" He's been defensive in those situations before, but the problem is even he in this situation with the offensive line He's saying, look, our wide receivers are actually doing their jobs out there. And from the film that I'm watching, for the most part, they are.
Yeah.
They are doing a very good job. I've been very, very poignant on that. The offensive line, though, this year has really kind of taken a step back. And it's not just the two positions that everybody's throwing a fit about, the left tackle and the right guard. Yeah. You're looking at lesser quality play from guys like Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, and Braden Smith as well. Right. And this is something, even Quentin Nelson in his interview, was it today? I think it was, where, he's just like, we've been really, really bad. And we feel like I felt part responsible for the firing of Frank Reich, because our play has been bad. And I think Ballard was just, coming up here and stating that, hey, the offensive line hasn't been playing up to their standards and up to where we're paying them, even though they've earned that pay. We paid them because they earned what they got at that time. And then after we paid them, the play started to fall off. This needs to change. Just flat out. It needs to change.
Yeah, it was really odd. I mean, it really did feel really odd to see him come after the media like that. We've seen it before, right? And like you said, I mean, when it came to the wide receiver position, he's been adamant about it for like 2 years, right? Like saying that I go and get these. I'm not going to just go get anybody. I'm not just going to go do this. They got to fit us. They got to fit our mold, and it's weird too, because just the way that comment came out, I think that he didn't intend it to be that way, but I think it's just weird because, the last, 3 drafts that we've had, he has gotten a wide receiver 2 out of the 3 times in the second round, right? So, you've gotten one guy in those years. It's not like Ballard completely ignored offensive linemen every single year in the draft and, just went wide receiver. And now you're just saying, oh, boo-hoo, right? Like it's not like I didn't try. Like, he's made him and Reich have made a lot of questionable decisions on the offensive line on who to let go, who to bring back, who to put where. And on top of it's also the regression of Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, and Braden Smith this year. But, it was weird because you could make that argument if your hand wasn't tied to the fact that you still don't have a left tackle that can block, and that everything else is, the fact that the players are just not playing well, but it just doesn't seem like. And then when your coach is coming out and saying, like, we all see it, it's all the offensive line's problem, right? Like, they're giving up 35 sacks this year through 9 games. That will not win you football games if you're giving up 4 sacks a game on average, which is worse than the league. Everyone knows it, but yet no one wants to say it. The offensive line, other than Ballard, before that comment said, we need to improve. Like, it's the first time somebody in that organization said, yeah, the O-line needs to get it together. Like, it needs to be fixed now. Because Reich was just saying, it's not on the O-line. It's on me. I just got to hope that they figure it out. Like, what do you mean? We know it's a problem. We all see it every Sunday. There's only one game this year where we sat back and said the offensive line wasn't a problem. But then the other 8 games, you gave up 35 sacks.
Well, and it's funny. It's funny because it took Frank Reich being fired and Jeff Saturday, an O-lineman, a premier, well-respected offensive lineman in the National Football League, to become your main boss outside of, obviously, the GM and the owner. But to be the head coach, for your guys to start taking responsibility for their own actions, taking accountability. I'm wondering where that came from. You brought that up. Was that something that Jeff, during the presser or during his meetings this morning or yesterday, talked to the team and said, you're all going to take accountability for all of your jobs, right? I'm wondering if that had a lot to do with it, because you are dead on right. Frank Reich took all the accountability,
Yeah.
Throughout the entire season. Anytime anything went wrong, oh, there was a block punt. Oh, that's on me. Oh, there was, Rodrigo Blankenship shanked a field goal, and that's why we ended up with our first game tie. Oh, that was on me. I mean, everything is on when it's not.
Yeah.
Players have to take accountability for their play on the field. Coaches have to take accountability for the job that they do. And this is a situation where I think Jeff, obviously, he's going to say it's on him as well, but he's going to put it on everybody else to admit when they have a bad game, right?
Yeah.
And do what they can to fix that.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see that, because the fire that has been in Jeff Saturday's eyes, I want to see that fire back in the offensive line. I want to see that fire from Quentin Nelson that we saw in his rookie and his sophomore season when he was out there trying to bury every defensive player he got a hand on, right? I want to see that back. I want to see Ryan Kelly out here feeling comfortable with guys that they have their blocks, and he's able to get to the second level and make the block so that your running backs can get more than 2 yards per carry. I want to see this stuff happen again. And there's a situation where it's a good possibility that Jeff Saturday may have that. People are out here talking about, oh, well, the team is tanking. That's what this move is about. You fire your offensive coordinator, you fire your head coach, you hire someone with absolutely zero experience. Obviously, the team is tanking. No. First off, Jeff Saturday don't know what the meaning of tanking is.
Yeah.
This is not a guy. And every coach, every player on this team is fighting for their paychecks, their jobs, their loved ones, their families. There's no such thing as tanking when you are a player or when you're a coach. Yeah, the owner, maybe.
The owner, maybe the executives, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But when it comes from the head coach down, no one from the head coach down ever has any idea of trying to tank. And I'll guarantee you that Jeff Saturday is out there trying to get his team to get out there and put the best product they possibly can on the field every given Sunday.
Also, shout out to the 215 people in here, guys. Be sure to like the stream. Be sure to subscribe. One last thing here, Lawrence, before I let you go and I bring some of my other guys on here. We've had the experiment of Jim Irsay has now really been taking control of this franchise. Everyone has seen it. The decision to get rid of Marcus Brady felt like a Jim Irsay thing. The move of Sam Ehlinger to quarterback, that felt like, even though they said that was a Frank Reich thing, I'm almost 100% confident that was an Irsay-led initiative. They just let Frank Reich make the decision or take the credit for the decision. I don't know if it was supposed to make him look good or look bad. I'm not 100% sure. But there was that. And then, the decision to fire Frank Reich, that is that. Apparently, Ballard never even spoke to Jeff Saturday before Irsay decided to hire him as the new coach, right? Or I don't know if that's 100% definitive, but from what I heard, he didn't bat for him, but Ballard said he liked the idea of it. Obviously, Irsay's in charge right now. Irsay is just he's taking kind of the Jerry Jones initiative here where, it's my way or the highway, at least at this moment in time. Do you think that's going to cause more problems as time goes along? Because, Irsay continues to say, Ballard's going to be back. Ballard's, I have no doubt Ballard's going to do this. But he said the same thing about Frank Reich a week ago, and then he's gone, right? It felt like the bond between the three of them were really solid. And now Irsay has just gone into like a dictatorship sort of initiative within this organization. Do you think it's going to cause problems with this organization going forward, him taking all of this control back?
Well, here's the thing. Okay. So like we talked about, Irsay never really has been known to do that before. And I think this is, as we talked about at the beginning of this stream, where, I think there was a lot of emotions when it comes to, some of the actions that he has used in delving his hand into the organization. This is his team, right? He understands football. We've talked about that. And he, without any question, just like all the fans out there, was absolutely sick of what he was seeing, the product being put on the field week after week after week. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. So he, I'm sure, felt like he needed to make executive moves, to try to fix the team. Now, the problem is, to your point, can this be a long-term negative effect on the team? He's got to stop now. He's made his moves. He's made that massive change at the head coach. If you're going to fire your GM, fire him. But you said, Jim Irsay straight up said, like what you said, he's good for next year. His job ain't even on the line.
Yeah.
So at this point, take your hand out of the cookie jar. Let the guys you hired do their job now. This is a new head coach. You've got a new system and a new culture being brewing. Let it cook. You got to keep your hands out of the cookie jar now. Otherwise, you're just going to ruin what you're trying to reestablish.
I totally agree with you. I think that's a very interesting fact. Didn't really think about that, but yeah, I think you're right. He's made all the moves. He has said everything he has said. Now at this point, you're kind of in a situation where you want to say, okay, I've done what I'm needing to do. Let it run its course now. And then we'll react later on as new things come out. But you've done your damage. You've made your bed. Now sit in it. It's kind of one of those situations. So I totally agree with you. Lawrence, hey, thanks so much for coming on here. Guys, we are going to continue this stream for a little bit longer. I have some other people coming on, but Lawrence, man, it was a pleasure talking with you. I always enjoy having you on these streams. You always bring a new insight to things that I don't think about when it comes to things like this. I mean, it may not be a great time to be in the Colts locker room for this, but certainly is great as a Colts content creator because there's a lot to discuss with what's going to happen with this team as well going into the offseason.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that I'm able, that I sit here and I talk to, former players and current players on the team, daily. Right.
Yeah.
And get that little bit of insight on what's going on. And, anytime you or anybody else, you've reached out to me a few times, asking questions and I got guys on social media that do it as well. I'm constantly texting back and forth with guys because especially this past week, my phone has been kept on a charger 24/7 because of all the text and phone calls that I've had over the last 48 hours. But it's a pleasure being here and talk with you and discuss a lot of this stuff. I definitely need to come on here more often. I need to have you and Cody on my show more often as well. It's just, hopefully sometime soon. Maybe we could do, since StreamYard has one of those where we can share things, right, of some sort. Maybe we could do one of those like co-op streams sometime.
I'll have to look into that. Didn't realize that was a thing, but yeah, I'll have to look into that. But yeah, thanks again, man, for coming on. Greatly appreciated, dude.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Yep. See you, dude.
Later.
Okay, we're still going, so you can you can go ahead and do what you got to do. All right. Yep, there we go. All right, guys. So, like I said, guys, we're still going here. Like a joint stream. Thanks, guys. AB, I appreciate it, man. But yep, just waiting for my other guys to come in here. Shouldn't be much longer once they actually decide they want to show up. Larger for Colts GM. Hey, I wish, man. I wish. I got a buddy coming in though that does want to be a GM at one point. That is That is his future goal. So we'll see. We'll see what he has to say about what's going on and everything. But appreciate you guys hanging out with me. 200 of you guys in here. Greatly appreciate it. Be sure to like the stream, guys. Helps it get out to more people. We could have over 100 likes in the stream right now if you guys go ahead and like this stream. Wonder if Saturday will whip this O-line into shape. That's the big question right now, is Jeff Saturday, being a former offensive lineman, especially in the building, was a Indianapolis Colt offensive lineman. Does he whip this team into the shape that they need to be back in, right? I mean, it could be a good question because Jeff Saturday is a guy that you take his word for everything that he does, right? I mean, it's a no BS kind of guy. So we'll see how it goes. To control back, the team has been semi-chaos. I mean, if there's semi-chaos, it's still chaos. Yes, he can and will, and don't be surprised if Kelly is benched and Pryor's out the door. Oh, man. Well, I've been saying the idea of, Kelly being benched for Danny Pinter and the fact that, Pryor, I said it after, he should be gone already. There shouldn't be an issue. You think Riddick would get a GM call? I don't know. I said that I don't remember if that was last offseason or something, but I felt like Louis Riddick at some point could, get a GM job, to be honest with you. Jeff was very angry earlier in the year about how the Colts O-line was playing. I agree. There's my buddy Chase. Let's bring him in here. Chase.
Hello. Good morning, Starshine. The Earth says hello.
Saying that. My gosh. Guys, he always says that to me every time I talk with him. Like, it's always the Willy Wonka intro line. I don't get why he does it, but just why is Josh having so much issues now?
I think he's in the room before this, Derek, and he's not entering the studio.
Yeah, well, he can't enter. He can enter it. He was in here. He was in here for a split second, and then he backed out. So I don't know why.
Yeah, he said, "Can I enter the studio?
Yay or nay?" Oh, there's Josh. Let's get him in here. Josh, what's up, dude? Can we hear you?
What?
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, my setup was on mute.
Oh, okay. Of course it was. We used to have so many issues, Chase, back when he had when he was trying to do Discord stuff with Toby and I. Half the time his stuff would just be on mute for no reason whatsoever.
Well,
That's why we started 15 minutes
Courage
ago.
the Cowardly Dog. He lives in the middle of nowhere.
That's very true. Guys, if you want to know where Josh lives, you'll never find it. He just lives in the middle of nowhere.
I'm off the grid.
Oh, man. Well, guys, we were just talking about on the show before, we were talking about what has been going on with the Colts over the last 72 hours. It's been absolutely insane. Josh, I know you are an Indianapolis Colts fan, such as I. Tell me what has been going through your mind over the last 72 hours with seeing, Reich being fired, Saturday being hired, the presser, everything else that went on.
I haven't seen much of the presser just because I don't know what's going on fully with it, but nor do I really want to truly know what the game plan is from here on out. But
Tank for CJ, that's the plan.
Yeah,
but the thing is, we have three
There
wins.
wasn't much that you missed, though, Josh. I mean, it was mainly just Irsay talking for the majority of the time.
Yeah, and that's one of my big concerns is that Irsay's going to be taking over the GM role here soon if Ballard can't get anything, going the way that Irsay wants it to go, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And with the Reich firing, we all kind of knew it was going to happen eventually, but it just happened too early, I guess.
It was very sudden. Yes.
Yeah, very, very sudden.
So
I've talked to a couple guys that have talked to a bunch of the players, and the word around the locker room on Monday was just total shock. Everyone that you talk to is just utter shock.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
What was happening? Well, I mean, just because, there was no mention in the locker room before of firing Frank Reich. Even just a week prior, Jim Irsay was saying his job is safe, at least till the end of the year, right? Like your owner is saying that. And then a week later, after you just had a total dump against the New England Patriots, here you are. You got fired, and it was on a day after the game. Nobody's in the building, right? Unless you're like getting like treatment and stuff, you're not in the building during that time. So all of this is just, happening over socials, or guys are getting texts, right? Mm-hmm. And then 4 or 5 hours later, Jeff Saturday gets hired. It was all shock. It was just like players couldn't believe that in the span of 4 hours, you went from a guy that you were coached with for anywhere from 6 months to literally the last 5 years. And now he's gone. And this new guy that nobody's ever been coached by before is coming in. Right. So It was shock around the locker room.
Derek, 2 things. First one, that's what you get when you lose for the Washington Commies. Okay. You lose your job.
Yeah.
It
wasn't the Commanders one that lost it. It was them having the worst offensive output in literal Indianapolis Colts history. Like that, it was the worst offensive performance ever by Indianapolis on that day. They had 121 yards of offense, Chase. That's like something that a college team like an Ohio State would do against like an Appalachian State or whatever, like an FBS school facing an FCS school. They get 120 yards of total offense and they just beat them like 40-0, right? Like that's what that game felt like.
Mm-hmm.
So why Jeff Saturday? Like, where did that come from?
Well, I think that, for one, I don't know if you guys have seen my tweets or have seen anything from the podcast that we've been doing, but apparently Irsay has been trying to get Saturday in the building for like the last 10 years. 2012,
Friday.
Yeah, 2012, they tried to get him in as the offensive line coach. That didn't work out. And Ballard even admitted in the presser that in 2019, they asked him again if he wanted to be the new O-line coach. It just didn't work out. And now all of a sudden here it is because, Irsay trusts Jeff Saturday and the player that he once was for Indianapolis and who he is as a man, as a person, as a former player. And that's what the Colts have tried to do, is bring a lot of these former players in as coaches to try to build a locker room of winning. So far, it just hasn't worked. But I mean, ironically enough, there are 2 coaches on the Indianapolis Colts roster or scouting team that actually played with Saturday in Indianapolis. Reggie Wayne was one of them, and also Cato June, who's our linebackers coach. Both of those guys played with Jeff Saturday. They know him. They understand who he is as a person and as a player. So it'll be very interesting. I think that Irsay wanted a guy that he felt he could trust, because I don't think Irsay's in a very trustworthy mood right now with how everything's going down with the organization. So I think he just said, I don't give a damn about the experience of who is being hired right now. For these last 8 games, I need somebody in this building I could trust and is going to help me to understand what needs to be done going forward with this team to be able to win a Lombardi. And I think that's where you have it here. I mean, Chase, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because the whole argument has been, Jeff Saturday, is getting this job and he's unqualified and he's getting it off of privilege and he shouldn't be getting it and everything else that's going on. I mean, what's your take on Jeff Saturday being named the coach? Do you think he wasn't deserving of it?
Well, I think that there's guys out there that are, deserving of different positions. Like, I know that for me, I've been trying to break into the football role for a while in scouting. Like I said, I've taken scouting and GM courses online with former NFL scouts and got a certificate for that and everything. And like, there's people that are trying to break into this industry and with who better than a former player who has played the sport not that long ago with a lot of people in this league and knows the league inside and out rather than a former player. And we've seen former players, Mike Vrabel, look at him now as a head coach. Obviously he was a positions coach with the Patriots before and everything, but he was a linebacker that played the position, that knew what he was doing in the league. And now look at how well he's done as a head coach. I think that bringing Jeff Saturday in was a good choice, but the only issue that you're going to be facing with him is he's never coached in the college or pro level before. So you're going to be wondering what the heck is he going to be doing, or if he knows what he's doing. But the fact that he's not like trying to call plays or not, trying to be a defensive coordinator, he's just strictly trying to be the head coach. That's exactly what you need at this point in time.
Josh, how do you feel about it?
It's definitely out of left field. That's for sure.
Yeah.
If you were to tell me that Jeff Saturday was going to be the head coach of the Colts, I'd be like, he's on ESPN. Why would he leave that job?
That was definitely weird, dude.
Yeah. Nothing against Jeff Saturday. But was he even considered in the organization to be the interim head coach? Or was everybody just going to be like, oh, special teams head coach is going to take over? And
I can tell you the answer to that. Apparently, like Saturday I think Irsay's been in contact with him for a few months about the idea, or he's like contacted before about potentially doing it, even though like nothing was really ever set in stone. But I'll tell you how the process went down, guys. So, because I know this for a fact now because of everything that's come out, and more is still coming out. So Sunday during the game against the Patriots, he called Jeff Saturday during the game to ask Jeff Saturday about what's going on with the team. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? What's your opinion on this? That's what happened. And then Sunday night, I don't remember if it was Sunday night or if it was or Monday morning, like extremely early Monday morning, one way or the other. I think it was Sunday night, I believe. He called Saturday and asked him, like, do you want to be the next head coach of this team? And that's what he did. And he said yes. And he offered him the job that night, the night after. And then Irsay proceeded to fire Frank the next morning. And then, Saturday was announced shortly after. So that was how it went down with that. I will tell you guys this, and I'll give you, I'll tell you this. I've already said it once on this stream already, but I'll let you know it. From what Zach Kiefer was telling everyone on Twitter, Irsay never met with Frank Reich when he decided that he was going to fire him. He literally phone called him that next morning and said, "You're gone." So he never actually brought Frank to the building and announced this decision. He apparently did it with Chris Ballard over the phone, and then that was history. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on that whole process. So start with Josh.
Come on. He gave us 4 seasons. The least you could do is bring him into your office before you decide to detonate this season. I mean, come on. You can at least show some common courtesy there.
I felt like that was the right thing, right? Like it just kind of felt like it got mishandled.
Yeah, from the jump. I mean, look, I had my feelings with Frank Reich. Sure, they were strong the first 2 seasons, but then after that, if you notice the Colts' style, it's that they're a second half team that gets buried in the first half. You know,
not as bad as it's been this year.
Oh yeah, definitely. I just this just definitely feels like Irsay himself, not the team. This is just Irsay himself. Just said, you know what? Season's over. We're done. Pack it up. Let's shut everything down. You know, keep Taylor off the field for the rest of the season. You know, only keep Ellinger going.
I can tell you this. I mean, from what it sounds like, from what Ballard and Irsay are saying, is there is no way this team is throwing in the towel. They said like that has never once occurred. Even with all these moves that has happened, this team is fully dedicated to winning every single game for the rest of the season going out. That's what Irsay has been saying.
Irsay said a lot of stuff, and it left us with Jeff Saturday as a head coach, with no NFL coaching experience.
True that.
I get where he's come from with like the player coaches, and if you looked at Reggie Wayne coming in, Pittman especially, his stats have gone up when he stepped in. I mean, just look at this season right here. When Ryan was fully, capable of throwing the football and all that, Pittman was his go-to target, and it paid off just having the right coaching staff come in. And I think seeing Pittman and the other wide receivers catches and receiving yards go up and stuff probably gave him the idea that, hey, maybe more player coaches might help this team. But to just kind of trip at the starting line with this just kind of made everybody second guess that idea that it only makes sense to Irsay and nobody else.
Yeah, it's definitely been the Irsay show over the last few weeks. Chase, your thoughts on that situation, and if you believe that, what do you believe that there's something Saturday can do to help this team get it figured out? And, do you believe there is a chance that Saturday could be the coach full time after this season is over?
Okay, before I start, Reggie Wayne was your wide receivers coach?
Yes, he has. He got announced that this last offseason. Yeah.
I never knew that this whole season.
Really?
This whole season, I never knew.
How come I swear I've said that to you before?
No, I never knew this whole season.
Sheesh. Well, yeah. Reggie Wayne is the wide receivers coach for Indianapolis.
Well, no wonder Michael Pittman is better than what he was last year.
No wonder all the wide receivers are better this year.
But anyway, to answer your question, I think that part of the reason Reich did this was, it doesn't make him look stupid if Jeff Saturday pans out. It makes him look like a freaking mad genius, because realizing that, in the league nowadays, it's more offensive heavy, and, you've got the stereotype of draft an offensive minded head coach, try to build around your offense, try to, have this guy come in and coach your quarterback. Well, Irsay is realizing, okay, we don't need that. We just need a guy that is going to be a player's coach, somebody that the players can relate to, and, he can bring out the best in everybody. And he realizes, okay, rather than trying to have somebody take over on the staff already to come in and coach these guys, he wanted to think outside the box and bring somebody in that was from the outside, that has been with the organization, knows the players, knows how the organization is ran, and to have them coach. Because like I said, if he does good, it makes Irsay look really good. And it makes him look like, wow, okay, maybe other GMs and other owners are going to start trying this. And two, it'll make it better to where he doesn't have to look like for a new head coach long-term. And that was the thing. I was going to ask you guys, do you feel like if Jeff Saturday takes off and ends up, going through the rest of the season, winning games, do you feel like he should take over as the new head coach? I think that he should, because right now, if you guys finish the season with like 5 more wins, 6 more wins, 7 more wins, whatever it may be, like 5, 6, or 7, I think that he should have a shot. And like the thing is, you should put all your chips in one basket, go for a quarterback this offseason, and try to, build this team from the ground up, starting with the quarterback. I mean, Jeff Saturday, it's a shot in the dark with him, But, either way, it makes Irsay look good because it's just like, well, he was an outside hire. We tried it. We failed. Or if he succeeds, it's just like, wow, I'm a freaking mad genius. And I just made the greatest move in NFL history, hiring somebody that's, hasn't coached at this level before. And look at what he's doing. He's winning. So, it kind of, you got your pros and cons with this.
Well, I mean, after the season's over, Irsay said it in the presser that, there will be a process after the season is over. They'll look at every coaching candidate and decide who's going to be best for this team. I think the one thing that Saturday has going for him is, again, I come back to the trust thing. I think that's the one thing that he has over anyone else that could be brought in is the fact that he has that Saturday has the trust of Irsay. Josh, listen, emotional drugged out owner. Dude, he has been clean for like 30 years. I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, though. When you see Irsay's history and you look at the Colts, they do not line up.
I know. I understand that. But it's Saturday. Saturday is just one of those situations where you're trying to see if he can, like Chase said, get the best out of his players right now. That's ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to see which players are worth saving this offseason, which players are not, right? So that's kind of what you're wanting to see.
I really hope that with Saturday taking over, it starts to lead to like an Avengers Endgame moment where like all the past Colts greats just walk through the door. Like you got Peyton Manning as the OC, Dwight Freeney as the defensive coordinator, and all that stuff.
I got a question for both of you.
What's that?
Do you think Jim Irsay should fire Chris Ballard and let Ed Dodds or somebody else take over?
Hey, does that mean that we get to trade up in the draft?
Yes.
Then
here's my question. Here's my thing here is the only reason I think he's keeping Ballard around. One is the fact that, again, I think Ballard has done more good for this team than what Reich has. Mm-hmm. Ballard has, for the most part, put together quite a few decent picks on this team. The draft that they do, I mean, for the most part, the Colts do a very decent job in drafts, right? They've done a pretty decent job bringing in some staples on this team.
You can't pull the trigger on a quarterback.
I understand that. And I think what that leads me to my point is he is saying, all right, Ballard, this is your shot here. It is time for you to go and get the quarterback that this team needs to have for the future. You have players coming out that are the one player who has said it is now gone. Naheem Hines. Hines said it 4 weeks ago or even 5 weeks ago that this team, it's a struggle every year going from quarterback to quarterback and not having to we can't get into a rhythm that way. That's the problem that they've had. So I think Irsay is probably going to sit back and he's going to say, all right, Ballard, here's the thing. You're one shot here because you failed to do it for the last 3 years. Go and get the quarterback that we need. I don't care what it costs. Go do it. And if you bomb on that one, then we can say we tried and we just go try and do it again. If it works, then great. You keep your job. That's exactly what it is, because I think he's trusting the fact that Ballard can do it along with everything else that has happened with his history of drafting studs. But the problem we have is, like you said, it's in a situation where they need their franchise guy. And
Ballard said he doesn't like developing rookies, and that's
I understand. Yeah, that was an issue. I mean, we're talking about, I told you this, Chase, even on our podcast, that our other podcast that we have, that Chris Ballard had the chance to go and get Justin Fields. He loved Justin Fields. He loved the player that he was, but yet failed to go and get him, right? And 2 years ago, right? So we're in a situation where, man, we're seeing what Justin Fields is doing right now with what he's doing with the Bears roster. I could only imagine what he would be doing with this Colts team if the offensive line wouldn't have been as trash as it is now, right? But I'm talking about like from even last year, things could have went insanely different, right? But again, that goes back to the argument that people are questioning is, can Ballard actually take enough accountability to actually go make that move, right? Because we've seen him try to do it before, but he always gets in his own way. But I think before he had a reason to. For a while, I felt like he had a reason to not do it, right? Well, he doesn't have a reason anymore. You don't got a good quarterback. You don't have anyone that's going to carry this team. Go and get the future franchise, or at least attempt to.
Now, Josh, I want to ask you this question, and then Derek, you answer it after that.
All
So there's been a lot of reports coming out that Mark Davis is going to trust Josh McDaniels and what he's doing there. And that means by all means, if he has to get rid of Derek Carr, he has to get rid of Derek Carr. Josh, do you feel like if Derek Carr becomes a free agent or available for trade, would you want to get him or develop a rookie?
Let's develop a rookie. Let's get off this carousel here. It's time to go back to the draft. You know, you can only take quarterbacks from other teams. So, like, look, we're deadlocked in this quarterback carousel that we've gotten ourselves into after Andrew Luck's retirement. And that's why I think we should keep going on with a rookie quarterback. Like, if one doesn't pan out, you know, you at least get 4 years with him to figure it out. You know,
are you willing to give up 2, maybe even potentially 3 first-round picks to get your guy?
Yeah.
That's
what you got to do in this league. You know, you can't go beyond it anymore. It's draft picks are. I mean, the funny thing is, like, people say this all the time. Yeah, the Rams aren't playing really good this year because for some reason, like, their offensive line's trash and they just haven't been the same. They lost a couple of guys that really could have helped, but they sold it all for a championship, and they did it. They won because they bought their team. They didn't need draft picks. They literally got rid of 3 first-rounders to go get Matt Stafford, gave up 2 first-rounders to go get Jalen Ramsey. They drafted Aaron Donald, and you went and you drafted Cooper Kupp. Like, that's one of those situations where, I mean, this team was bought and to get what they want. So I feel like you definitely can do that. No Lamar Jackson. Not. I don't think that's something we should do. Justin Fields was on Ballard's list, but he got out big because of the Carson Wentz trade. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? The Colts weren't going to make that move because they didn't have the draft compensation. They already gave up a first to be able to do that, right? So that was the problem with that issue there. What's up, guys? As an Eagles fan, the Colts better get a quarterback because his franchise has ruined a guy like Andrew Luck, and that's what's sending you guys back. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Apparently, JPR says, Josh, you sound like Patrick Mahomes. I didn't even notice that before.
No, I guess not.
Turkey Frog here.
I
will sell my voice. That means we get Patrick Mahomes to be the Colts quarterback.
I got a better idea. Have Scott Tolzien come out of retirement.
Ha! Shut up. It's just, and it makes me even more mad too because imagine if Ballard didn't trade for Wentz, right? And the fact that Fields fell all the way to the 13th pick or 13th pick in that 2020 draft. I mean, think at how crazy that is that that we could have only went up about 9 spots.
It was the 11th pick.
Whatever. We could have went up like 10 picks in that. We would have had to give up 2 firsts and, you know, maybe a second or third, and then we could have went in and gotten him. I mean, think of how crazy that would have been. You know, like, that's the issue that we're in right now.
Why am I the only one that's getting so much flack, so much grief, and so much criticism for thinking that the Texans and the Panthers are not going to choose a QB this time around? The only reason I say that is Because if you look at the Panthers, they drafted Matt Corral, never actually got a chance to see what he could do with this team at all. The thing is, if you build that offensive line, you build up that, get another star wide receiver, and then you ride out the season with Matt Corral, the next QB draft class is just as good as this one with Caleb Williams and everybody coming out, that they could have a shot of getting somebody. Same thing with the Texans.
Chase, you see that sign behind Derek?
What sign?
We're talking about that sign behind him right there.
I know, but what I'm saying, that's
here.
what I'm saying though, is because I don't think that the Texans or Panthers are going to choose a quarterback this year. Then that gives them more ample like.
Oh, I'll tell you right now though. I'll tell you right now though.
Stroud.
Parallel here. The Texans are taking a quarterback. You can't ride with
I believe they will. I believe they will.
You can't ride with Davis Mills.
Josh,
I do, because I think that, and the problem is, Chase, is I think that they have learned that Davis Mills is going to be limited for the amount of potential you can get for him. Obviously, doesn't have a lot of great weapons right now, but I think that we understand the limit of Davis Mills. But it's one of those situations where I think from all the mock drafts that I've seen from people, like literally the first 3 picks are all going to be quarterbacks. Literally, it's going to be Stroud, Young, Levis. Like that's literally it. The first top 3 is what they're thinking.
No, but the reason why, because like if you look at how teams are building, like other teams are building their teams, they go with a certain aspect first. Like they're building their defense, and then the next year they go all in on offense. And I think that's what the Texans are going to do. They got 2 first-round picks. They're going to use that first one. I feel like they're going to use that first overall pick on Will Anderson. And then I think that they're going to use the second pick on getting a linebacker, a corner, whatever. They're going to build defensively this time around. And then next year, when you've got like guys like Caleb Williams and like I don't even know any ones, but like when you've got like a lot of the good quarterbacks next year, I feel like that's when they're going to go.
All I'm saying, back to get us back on topic here. I hope we draft Marvin Harrison Jr. when he comes.
Yeah, but that's next year. That's not this year.
Next year. I know. We need to get.
We're not going to be able to do that if we trade up for our first for a quarterback this year.
And then get Marvin Harrison.
We're going to have to get rid of an extra first next year. We ain't going to be able to get Marvin Harrison Jr.
You don't have to trade up that.
I'll just say this: whoever gets Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State is going to have the best wide receiver in the NFL at one point. I promise you, he's going to be that good. He's going to be that elite.
You don't have
to. All right, let's get back on topic, Derek. Let's get back on topic.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we're allowed to be on my topic. Okay, this is my show. All right, we go on rants whenever we want.
This is turning into us living in the same apartment again.
Hey, listen, I want to relive those days, okay? I'm going to be up there in February so we can relive those days, okay?
All right.
Anyways, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Colts do going forward with this. The offseason is going to be fun because I think that the quarterback thing is going to be pretty funny. Before we go back into the Colts thing here, let's just go off topic for a split second. Let's talk for a split second about no, I'm not waiting 3 years to go and get Arch Manning. Not waiting 3 years. And also, for the Commanders, I know I texted you guys this earlier. So apparently like there's like a giant lawyer that has, I don't remember. It was the DC of that county where they're residing in that has gone through like thousands of legal documents. And apparently a big announcement is expected to be made tomorrow, making it sound like as if there's something to indict Dan Snyder on. So what's your guys' reaction to that?
Well, remember, Ballard was the first one, or not Ballard, Irsay was the first one to kind of be like, all right, I see what you got. Pull the trigger then, see what you can do. Because if I remember correctly, am I remember that correctly, Derek?
Yeah.
That was Irsay that told
it was Irsay, the one that the first NFL owner that called him out. Yeah.
So I think that if he does leave the team in some way, I think that they'll probably be better off because, if you look at Dan Snyder's history with the Commanders and what they were called years ago, it was not good. Like, we can go back to that whole Sean Taylor thing, which was just a way to deflect from most of the criticism heading his way. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is just a pretty bad owner, if you ask me.
Yeah, true. Chase, any thoughts on this news?
I want to address this real quick first.
No,
he's a raw prospect. He's not ready yet. Give him one more year at Florida, then we'll talk.
Yeah.
But, Dan Snyder, it's very controversial. Like, everything that's been going on, he's been trying to fight everything, the women that come out with the allegations against him. He's been gotten backlash from the logo that he had, from the team name that he had. And, he came out to Jim Irsay and said, "I've got dirt on you and half the other owners in this league." Irsay's like, "I've got nothing to hide. Everything was all out in the open already that people know about. So come at me with all you've got." The question I have, who the hell is going to take over being owner of this team if Dan Snyder gets arrested or leaves? Like, that's what my question is. And like, what punishment is going to be, brought forward with Dan Snyder in the NFL? Because we saw what Roger Goodell and the NFLPA did to the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins had 2 first-round picks this year. They forfeited one because of the whole scandal with trying to get Tom Brady before the legal tampering period in free agency. And then they also just traded away their other first-round pick. And Stephen Ross got suspended up until mid-October and got fined like over $1 million. What punishment is going to come forth for Dan Snyder with all of the stuff that's going on? And not just him. What punishment is going to come forth for Jerry Jones? What punishment is going to come forth for Robert Kraft? What are they going to do to those two individuals if Dan Snyder gets in trouble? That's all I'm saying.
I don't know. We'd figure that out as time goes along, but yeah, I don't think anything actually happens to the Commanders franchise specifically, because it was all the works of Dan Snyder. But we'll see what happens. I do question what this big announcement's going to be, and unfortunately, I'm going to be at work probably when that announcement happens, so I'm not going to be able to react to it right away.
We're going to rename the commies the Redskins.
Nah, they ain't gonna do that. Too woke of a time for that. But going back to the Colts thing. So I do want to ask from both your guys' perspective, from one being a Colts fan and one guy here that wants to be a GM at one point. I want to get both your reactions to what Colts GM Chris Ballard said in the presser on Monday. People in the media asked him, like, "Hey, what's going on with this offense, man?" I mean, because, you brought in most of these guys, and it's massively underperforming. What's going on? And he said, obviously, the defense is playing really good ball, but the offense is the thing where it needs to improve, especially on the offensive line. He says, it's funny because you guys have been giving me shit for years about not drafting not getting wide receivers. And then I look up and all of a sudden we're underperforming at the offensive line. It's funny because, it's not like Ballard has gone out of his way to spend millions and millions of dollars on this wide receiver or tight end group, right? Like, the highest earning wide receiver on our team at the moment, all of them are under rookie contracts right now. So it's not really like Ballard has done anything to overhaul. His worst contract is he paid Mo Alley Cox $8 million a year for 3 years to be this team's tight end. And he's had 2 catches over the last 4 weeks of the season. So, if anything, and he spent the most money of anyone on that offensive line. The Colts offensive line is literally being paid the most in the NFL, but are giving up the most sacks in the league by at least 3. They've given up 35 sacks in 9 games. So very interesting that Ballard would say that to the local media people, insinuating that he decided to go away from the offensive line, and now all of a sudden, they're bad all of a sudden. Josh, I'll get your opinion on that. What do you say to Ballard saying that?
If there's one thing that's going to be like the first nail in his career as a GM for the Colts, it's going to be that. Because, yeah, we've hounded him for we need wide receivers. We need wide receivers. But while you're giving us wide receivers, you should also be not just going straight to defense and then getting offensive linemen later on in the 5th and 6th, 7th rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like the 2021 draft, I think it was. We passed up, like the 3 of us were there, remember? We were streaming it. I'm like, hey, I wouldn't mind Christian Darrisaw here, just kind of beef it up. And then nothing wrong with Kwity Paye, but it's just, if we want to keep our quarterback going, we need to have more of a offensive line that's more structured. It's to go from a top whatever offense we were last season to straight being close, if not at the bottom in just 1 year. Something broke in this offense, whether that's the offensive line or the quarterback changing. It's kind of baffling when you think about it, how quickly a team can just collapse like that. I mean, I was incredibly angry after the loss at Jacksonville, which we could have just sealed a deal and go to the playoffs with. And to this day, I still kind of think that pulling Wentz out so fast caused this power vacuum in the offensive line, because sure, he wasn't great, but he was doing a pretty good job at, at least getting some yards by throwing it, but allowing the running game to take over as the bulk of our offense. And then just immediately pulling him out after 1 year. I mean, at the time, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, yeah, let's go. He's gone. We can finally move on. And then you see him have success with the Commanders the first 3 weeks while Matt Ryan is regressing, and you go, wait a minute. Is this more of a Wentz problem or a coaching problem? And then that coaching problem turned into an offensive line problem. There's so much finger pointing at this and at this organization right now that it's just baffling at it. And at the end of the day, they're all pointing at Irsay, and Irsay's pointing back down at everybody else. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Nobody in this organization is taking accountability for the woes. I mean, back to the Ballard thing, he deflected that. He's just like, what more do you want from me? The minute you say that as a GM, you're done.
He literally said that. Yeah, he's like, what more do you want from me?
It's showing that you are making picks that will just, make sense in the short term and not the long term. It's like, oh, here's Matt Ryan. Here you go, another placeholder. He's going to be here for 2 years. He's already sitting on the bench.
Yeah,
and it's just ridiculous.
Hey, Hunter Peterson, thank you for the $2 super chat. Shout out to the 170 people in here, guys. Be sure to like the stream. He says most realistic option for quarterback in the draft. All right, your top 2 most realistic for the Colts, guys. Not for who you think is going to go number 1, number 2, not who you think the Colts should go for, who you realistically think they'll go for. I'll go first. I say it's Will Levis or Hendon Hooker. Josh?
I think it's Levis or Hooker as well. That's kind of what I've been feeling out too.
Chase?
Bryce Young or Hendon Hooker.
Okay. All right.
Every year you've got a quarterback that is high on a lot of people's draft boards that somehow falls to like the you know, 8th or 9th pick. Like, you always have that upper echelon quarterback that everybody is raving about that, for some reason will fall. And I think that's going to be Bryce Young. I think he's going to fall just a little bit, enough to where it's going to be like, oh, wow, he's here at the 7th pick. Let's trade up to the 7th pick and get him. Like, I feel like it's going to be Bryce Young or Hendon Hooker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Chase, your reaction to Ballard's statement on basically calling out the local media for, checking him on, his responsibility for that offensive line.
No, it's a big, you know what? If he can't handle the criticism, then get out of the kitchen. I mean, seriously, like he has had a massive issue with trying to open up his wallet during the offseason and sign some guys during free agency. A couple of years ago, the Browns opened up their wallet when Andrew Berry took over, and they signed a couple offensive guys, and it worked out really well. Look at what Jack Conklin has done on the right side of our offensive line for us. He's been a solid right tackle that we've desperately needed. And why? Because Andrew Berry wasn't afraid to pay the man a little bit of money. And he has given up the least amount of QB pressures on the right side, given up the least amount of sacks on the right side. And guess what? He's a free agent this offseason. Have Chris Ballard pay the money and go get him. It's actually going to be a great use to the right side of your offensive line at the tackle position. And there's going to be quite a bit of offensive linemen that are, available this offseason that are good enough to step in and take on the role. Like, you got Quentin Nelson as your left tackle, Ryan Kelly as your center, 2 great solid offensive line pieces to build around. And the fact that he went defense, which not an issue, by the way, but your desperate glaring need from that 2021 draft was offensive line. And you saw what happened with Andrew Luck when you don't address that. You've got to make sure that you've got that solidified by the time you draft your quarterback next year. Because if you don't have that solidified, your quarterback that you draft will have another Andrew Luck career. I promise you that.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the way this offensive line is played, yeah, any quarterback that we get at this point is going to have a short career if you do not get that figured out.
That's still what gets me, is that nobody in that organization took notes after the Quentin Nelson 2018 draft that, if we don't take care of our quarterback, we're going to be stuck like this. And that's just what irks me, is that we should have just kept building around our quarterback, no matter who it was going to be with offensive line power. Because that we're going to get old guys who are out of their prime or at the twilight of their prime anyway, going into this. So I just feel like Ballard really should have opened up the free agent wallet. Because what gets me about what gets me? You know what gets me about it the whole time, Derek?
What's that?
Everybody, is when you see the Colts on the free cap space list, you see them up there 1 and 2, and you see them only drop down to 3. And that's only because we signed Mo Alley Cox for $8 million.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't get it. Like, just go out. That's what just irked me so much, is that Zadarius Smith was still there. And I'm like, dude, he's going to make a great, pressure piece for us. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing with the free agency from this last offseason. Josh, you were mentioning it, right? Like, go and get the wide receiver, right? That's what we've all been saying. Mm-hmm. Well, Ballard came out, I think right before the draft and said, listen, it's difficult to get free agent wide receivers, big name free agent wide receivers, to come to your team when you don't have a quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have a quarterback. I can't just force these guys to come in. I could throw as much money at them as I want to, but at the end of the day, I don't know what else to do. Hey, shout out to JDW Sports Talk Show for becoming a new member. Greatly appreciate that, my guy. But anyways, we didn't have Matt Ryan. We didn't have a quarterback. And this is where I think the Colts need to go and get the quarterback of the future. Because when you start, why?
That's Chris Ballard.
Cheap. Yep, absolutely. He is Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob. But here's the thing, like, he is right in the sense that, a receiver is not just going to come anywhere if, even if you throw a lot of money at him, because who's going to throw him the football, right? That's the important aspect of this. Well, it's clearly showing you need to go and get the quarterback that is going to convince these wide receivers that you so desperately want to come to your team. That's the whole point. You need to entice them. And the best way to entice them is, are you winning football games? Who's coaching? Who's throwing me the football? If you don't have three things there that those guys like, then there's no point. There's no point in even trying to attempt it. I know they went for Allen Robinson. I know. I talked with somebody. They wanted Allen Robinson, but guess what? He took the $15 million per year, went to the Rams because guess what? They got Matt Stafford. Unfortunately for him, for some reason, they have just not been able to figure out how to use him in the system. But Sean.
You know what?
That pitch is so much better.
Allen Robinson had a chance to go to the Packers, but he went to the Bears. Just remember that. Just going into those choices what Allen Robinson had, he took the Bears over the Packers. And that was back in, I think it was 2016, 2017, something like that.
17.
17, yeah. Just wanted to put that out there.
You guys know that there's not very good free agent wide receivers this offseason. So
I could imagine.
Draft a couple.
Yeah, because that was last year's. It was last year's bundle. That was really good. So I'm not, and as a Colts fan, I'm not worried about the wide receivers that we have right now.
Yeah.
That's not my issue. Michael Pittman is going into his third season. He's our clear number one wide receiver. You just drafted a guy in Alec Pierce who, when you throw him the football, he actually does a good job of catching the football. Paris Campbell, your number 3, has been shown that when you actually get him involved in the offense, he can do some good things for you. Like, I'm not worried about this wide receiver group. Honestly, all 3 of those guys, I'd be more than happy to have those 3 guys leading this team going into next year with a rookie quarterback. I would trust any rookie quarterback with those 3 guys because guess what? They're all burners. Except for Pittman. Pittman's not much of a burner, but all of them got size. Half of them are burners. That's the thing. You got a great, versatile group of wide receivers here that with another year under Reggie Wayne's coaching, this group can turn into a really solid group. It's been the only group on this entire Colts offense that has actually done anything all year. There's been multiple times where Pittman's had 100 receiving yards in a game this year. There's been multiple times where Alec Pierce has made clutch catches to win us games. Paris Campbell over the last 3 weeks has shown you just how good he can be when you actually get him involved in the offense. That's not the problem. The biggest problem you have is the offensive line can't block, and the quarterback, we don't have a clear direct path with it right now. So you need those 2 things to be fixed. I don't give a damn about the tight ends or about the receivers right now. As far as I'm concerned, those are taken care of at the moment. I just care more about the quarterback of the future being on this team and talking about the offensive line and holding some of these players accountable. It's getting to a point where the Colts might have to start trading some of these guys on the offensive line to get new picks, to bring new people in. Now, and that includes Quentin Nelson. That includes it. That's an argument they should have.
Now, Derek, you and I have talked on our other podcasts, Chasing Larger Sports Stories, by the way. We have talked on our other podcast about, the top 4 QB prospects. Out of the ones that have a realistic shot of going to the Colts, or no, let's just say out of all of them, minus CJ Stroud, because I do have a feeling that he's going to go first overall or, third overall. Who do you think the Colts should go get? Will Levis or
No. If Ballard is really serious about keeping his job, he will open the gates of whatever dimension he needs to go from wherever we'd be at the time to number 1 to get CJ Stroud.
I don't
If he
care
wants to
about
save
us
his-
going to number 1. I don't care about that, but I'm talking about like you do have to go and get somebody. You
You have
do
to go
have
in the top 5.
Yeah, 100%. You got to go within the top 5. I mean, it's not because realistically, 3 quarterbacks can be taken within the top 5. You got to go do it. You know, like it's just one of those situations where, and that's the unfortunate thing is that if this team wins more games going forward, like if they win like 4 or 5 more games throughout the rest of these 8 games that they have, then yeah, that makes it a lot more difficult to do that, right?
Look, I'm telling you right now, the biggest enemy to the Colts is their own pride. They will not let themselves suck when they absolutely have to. I mean, 2011, they clearly did it, and they don't want to go back to that, because they I don't know what's going on from that point on, but they have to just push their pride aside, say, hey, we tried. I'm tired of the QB carousel. Our offensive line isn't there. Let's just call it a season. Well, I don't know, like lose out or win here and there, but keep us within.
Well, listen, I don't like to admit this, and I would never admit to tanking. I hate that as a team. But it's almost to the point where if you're like the Colts and you want to get that best quarterback, it almost does make 100% better chance to just lose out.
I mean,
right? And then get in the top 5, and then it makes it easier to trade up a few spots.
I mean,
like I want us to stay inside the top 10 picks.
From the outside looking in, that Jeff Saturday interim head coach thing looks like a legitimate tank job. That way he can just take the losses, cut them loose, and then bring in somebody else. And then we're going to keep Ellinger in there too. It's just, it's looking very suspicious.
I'm going to laugh if Jeff Saturday rattles off 5 straight wins.
If he does that, I kind of would be mad. Because that means we're going from up front in the draft to the back of the draft. And I'm tired of that.
Right now, the Colts are 14th when it comes to the draft order right now.
That's going to change.
Well, I think Seattle is going to start going on a win streak. I think that I think a couple teams will. I mean, what's crazy is that the Eagles are in the top 7 with draft order because they acquired the Saints pick. So they're in the top 7. That could be an interesting trade partner for the Colts. Is that one? It could be. If the Eagle, now it all depends on if the Saints continue to do terrible.
One team that you guys could very easily trade up with that I know doesn't want to be in the top 10, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They do not like to pick in the top 10 or don't want to, and I very well know that the Pittsburgh Steelers would be willing to give up their number 4 overall pick if they end up staying there for you guys to get somebody. The question is, out of Will Levis or Hendon Hooker, who do you guys want to get?
I mean, everybody already knows who I want, but
Stroud's out of the question. Stroud's out of the question.
Nah, Stroud's not out of the question. What are you talking about?
But if the Texans and Panthers do what I think that they're going to do, Stroud might be available at that 4th pick. So it's very possible. But if I were you, I would choose Hendon Hooker over Will Levis.
I don't know. Hendon Hooker's got his good things about him, and Levis has got his good things about him. So, it's
Josh, who do you want?
At this point, I'd be fine with just about anybody that is, younger.
I'm in that point too, Josh.
Yeah. Someone who's younger than us to man this team, to make this team look appealing to free agents. That's all I want.
Yeah,
because I'm still willing to give anybody a fair shot. you know, if they're a rookie quarterback starting for the Colts.
I even don't think that your rookie quarterback will start next year unless it's that desperate need. I think what they're going to do is if it's somebody like CJ Stroud, somebody like Hendon Hooker, somebody like Will Levis, or even somebody like Bryce Young, I think that they're going to sit for half the season, if not all of the season, and then start the next year. Ride the ship again with Matt Ryan, build the team up a little bit more, see what you can do, and then there you go.
I don't mind it.
Do you think that if for some reason the Colts don't take a quarterback in this draft, could you see Jim Irsay being a GM owner like Jerry Jones by the end of the next season?
At least until he can find somebody that, you know, he can trust. So, yeah, just I don't know. Chase, here's the thing. That would be great. If Chase can become the new GM of the Colts, then guys, we have all the insight in the world that we need, okay? Because this guy right here, I know him on a very personal level.
You're probably going to accidentally press the
tiny tidbits. Little tiny tidbits.
You'll find out on draft night.
No,
when you do
that's not
when you
true.
do the
You
Ricky
tell
Williams
me, but I
trade that
can't
the Saints
tell
did.
my audience. I just
You're
can't
literally
tell my
going to do
audience.
that. You're going to do that Saints trade for Ricky Williams or that.
Oh yeah, the freaking the trade to.
You're going to accidentally press like one or two
Williams, where
buttons.
they
You're gonna
traded
give
every
all our picks
single
away to one
pick
person.
in their draft to get him.
No, my lips are sealed, Derek. You'll find out on draft night, and it will not be told to anybody but me and Jim Irsay.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go, Jim Irsay. He knows. All right, and he's gonna, if he works with Ed Dodds and all those other guys, I know he's got a good head on him. I'll just tell you, Chase, is you better draft a freaking quarterback. That's all I'm saying.
You'll find
Do
out on
whatever
draft
you
night.
got to freaking do, man.
Well, I guess it would be out of the bag. Like if you see that the Colts acquire the number 2 overall pick, you would know that something's coming.
Yep.
But I would love to do that. I would put my fandom aside of being a Cleveland Browns fan and go be GM for the Indianapolis Colts. To be a part of the NFL and be in that position would be absolutely amazing, and it's something I would love to do. Like, you know, I would absolutely enjoy doing that.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. I'm going to hop off and play God of War some more.
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. Speaking of which, when are you going to get that, Chase?
Probably next week.
Okay, cool. Do that, and then we'll all be able to play together. It'll be awesome.
All right, everybody tune in to the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast starting.
Oh, you're chilling.
This man's trying to
chilling
plug in our other thing. But yeah, go ahead, guys. Follow that. The Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. Chase and I do another podcast over there. But thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Greatly appreciate it. Shout out to my 2 dudes down here for hanging out with me. Greatly appreciate it. I know you guys have been wanting to get on the podcast for a while. Greatly appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Yep. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.